What's up people, Koala here. I thought it could be a good idea to record a discussion type video. Never thought of doing it as they seem pretty easy to make, no need to record gameplay, and it keeps the channel alive. Sorry if I'm not always looking at the camera. Sometimes I will be reading my notes. But don't worry, I'll show you a couple of clips to illustrate what I'll be saying so that you won't get bored. So yeah, let's talk about Mindgames. This video will pretty much be an introduction to a big setup display I'll make later. I'll let you check the chaptering here and in the description. When I started playing Kazuya many years ago, I realized how important frames were to be able to optimize his strongest tool, the punishment. I labbed every character in the game, worked on various stuff like virtually nobody else. Then I fell into the pro player wannabe trope, like respecting theory too much. I would get really pissed whenever my health sweep got hop-kicked while I was at +8. Then the real reason why I love this game came to me. Mind games are everywhere. Even punishing a -10 move with jabs is technically a mind game. If your time frame punisher is a knockdown and you'd rather not give your opponent any room to breathe, you can go for a single jab into pokes, or you can even punish with G's instead with like a sweep or a wall splat throw. Frame theory is important, but it doesn't give you any rules, like no, don't do this at this situation, it's illegal. No, it's simply here to describe a situation and explain how it happened. Pretty much like music theory. It doesn't say anything like no, don't do anything off key, it's gonna be ugly. It just says if you stay in the key, your stuff is more likely to sound musical. Likewise, being at +5 doesn't mean you absolutely have to go for a 15 frames or faster move. Frames are only saying, if you do so, your next move is more likely to hit. Tekken is not as mashy as it seems. Maybe you could stop attacking to bait a panic move, maybe you could do a slower homing to counter side steps, maybe you could dash at your opponent's face to prevent him from moving away. In the end, the game is not a math exam, it's closer to winning enough mind games to win 3 rounds before your opponent. And nobody on earth is fully respecting theory. Most jabs are +1 on block. If you just respecting theory, the whole game would look like this. Jab, 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 jab. You can't attack, I'm at +1. Jab, jab. Oh no, you can't duck, I have mids. Jab, jab. No, forget about side steps, I have homings. Jab, jab. And don't even think about doing a dig jab. Since I am at +1, my own dig jab would go first. Jab, jab. Like, how boring would that be? This is why in my channel, while there is a lot of lab stuff, there is also a lot of meme stuff and outer space technologies. It's just really fun to try finding out how any move in the game can become useful with the right thinking, and how you can condition your opponent to eat any stupid shit. Now, after this long-ass intro, here is a little something I made and didn't know how to use. Let's talk about psychological damage and how it allows you to apply mind games.
Final round. Fight.
By the way, Giga's player actually won a pretty big tournament recently. I think it was, yeah, he's called Dottering. He was basically doing exactly what I'm saying, using the power of intimidation with forward for 2. I'm really happy to see that my thoughts got confirmed. Shout out to the main man for bringing that into my recommendation feed. Psychological damage allows you to control the flow of the game. It basically changes the way your opponent plays. And it's not only about single moves, it also works on game mechanics. In my strategy research about the Tag Crush, there is something I regret. Well, first, I should not have used one single extended soundtrack for the whole 30 minutes, but most importantly, I forgot to mention the intimidation factor of tag assaults, because they are a great tool to make your opponent panic and tag crush. Just think about it, you get launched, then comes the bound with a huge sound with a violent screen shake, and then you see two characters outlined in white violently pounding at yours. This shit is even scarier at the wall, and this is a big reason why when you go for an ender that recovers fast enough to sidestep a tag crush, it's more likely to work after a tag assault than after a solo combo. When you see a Dragunov doing a combo at the wall and ends it with back 2 while standing 4 instead of back 2 while standing 1+2, it's quite obvious that he is trying to sidestep a tag crush to punish it. But during a tag assault, when everything's happening so fast with a lot of characters moving, doing a lot of noise, sometimes you can't help feeling overwhelmed by the spectacular side of the scenery, and sometimes you can't help panicking. Speaking of spectacular stuff, now in Tekken 7 we have the Rage Drive and the Rage Art. Same idea, when you are back at the wall, blocking either Kazuya's electric or Rage Drive gives him the same advantage, +5 on block. But there's a higher chance of something happening after the Rage Drive, because the guy is like, shit, I need to do something. Well, after blocking the electric, he will just be like, yeah, whatever, you are +5, I'll just block your next move. This is why a lot of down forward 2s hit on counter hit after the Rage Drive. And now the Rage Art, when someone does a panic Rage Art and kills with it, usually he unknowingly steals the momentum of the match, because let's get in the shoes of the one who ate the Rage Art. Well, first you are pissed, but also seeing your character getting pummeled to death leaves a huge brand in your mindset, far bigger than just getting hop-kicked into a combo that kills. During the rest of the game, you realize you can't afford to keep pressuring your opponent when he has rage. You don't have to, but you want to bait the Rage Art, and if you are facing a scrub, that's fine, because this will most likely work. But if you are facing a good player, because yeah, it happens to anyone to panic Rage Art, he will take advantage of that stolen momentum to pressure you while being in complete disadvantage. Did you just put your opponent into a grounded position? Well, you can't go for an Oki. What if you eat another Rage Art? No, the dude can calmly wake up and do I don't know, something like a sweep. The best part is, if you are not into panic rage arts, you can do a rage art when you know it's pretty much guaranteed and use it in a way it could look like a panic rage art. For example, you're facing a Jin and both of you are in rage. He will try pressuring you with the rage drive, and there's no way he's just gonna do the first 2 hits and just wait blocking, right? Just rage out the mix-up, and congrats! Now if you get in the same situation, you have completely shut down Jin's rage drive. Now let's talk about another case. How would you feel after eating a fully guaranteed rage art, like on a whiff punish, a block punish on your own rage art, or a combo ender? And to me, the worst one is the overkill rage art. When you get launched, and at the moment you have 1 HP left, you eat a rage art. Having your obvious death turned into a suffer porn cutscene obviously doesn't feel good. Depending on the player you're facing, this can drastically change the way he plays. Of course, I'm not talking legit science here, but this is still an interesting bet to take. There were a lot of moments when I suddenly shifted the momentum of the game, and I can't help wondering why that happens. Oh, that's so sick. I needed the mid. Nope. You should have kept going low. Oh, I was waiting for the backlash, but it was too late. Ah, right, it's a counter hit launcher, the second hit. Let's go for psychological damage. Oh, too bad. Okay, Zeme! No, doesn't work. Oh, what was that? You rolled straight into it. Oh, that was a 1+2. Oh, that was so cheesy. After that, I realized an issue. If you want a rematch in ranked against an easy opponent, you can't do the rage art as a match ender. Giving your opponent a huge sense of defeat is not gonna help you get a rematch. Because yeah, if you want a rematch, utterly destroying your opponent is a bad idea. And even if you didn't, finishing with a big rage art is definitely gonna create that feeling. There were a couple of moments I used the rage art like a complete asshole and tried to rematch to get a funnier cheese clip, and most of the time I couldn't get my rematch. Then the overkill rage art. I gathered a bit of data with different opponents, and out of 11 matches that I ended with an overkill rage art, 6 didn't see the rematch. I know this stat is completely skewed, because yeah, I would need at least 50 games to get decently indicative stats, and there are probably other factors like the rank difference, or perhaps the opponent got annoyed at me defending and waiting to get nibbled by pokes until I get rage. But considering a majority of people rematch after the first loss, 6 quits out of 11 losses are still a pretty big portion.
I knew it. And here comes the Ragga. If you use it as a round ender, it could be a good idea to get the moment. Yeah, he flew. Thank you. Let's go for the psychology. No, that was not a good idea. Not as a match ender. If the psychological damage is too great, he is more likely to refuse the rematch. Yeah.
So yeah, the thing about psychological damage is, you want to provoke more mistakes from the opponent, but you can't overdo it, because then he might just give up. Which means if you have a clear advantage over your opponent and you want 3 points, it's more efficient to just piss him off.
Get ready for the next battle.
Key chargers are also pretty good at fishing rematches, because usually when you get key charged, for some reason you want to win the next game to give back that key charge.
Shit! You got me. Oh, key charges. I'm not mature enough to let that slide. Oh, and he leaves. What a douche.
Might be a controversial topic, but there's another way to make your opponent do more mistakes while still provoking him into rematches. It's to stack some moderate psychological damage with the same moves, which is commonly known as spamming. Let's have a little talk here. Getting your opponent pissed is a legit part of Mindgames, even though it sounds douchey, even if it sounds douchey. In a fighting game, the better player is the one whose skill and fighting spirit will prevail above anything else. Just like a good martial artist is supposed to follow his lifestyle and not get involved into random bar fights. If you get provoked, this is in a certain way a loss. Challenging your opponent's spirit has always been a strategy. Putting your opponent into a mental struggle can help you a lot, since most of players, me included, are bad at dealing with stressful situations until they are used to it, from going to tournaments. I know it doesn't sound sportsmanlike, but if doing something that feels uncomfortable to the opponent was objectively a bad thing, why do taunts even exist in most fighting games? Saying it's bad to spam, corpse kick, key charge, or taunt is simply a community thing. Stuff being good or ill-mannered depend on trends. Spamming throws used to be considered an asshole thing in previous games, but now that they are easier to break, you don't hear that as much. Warming up your wave dash between rounds used to be fine, but now it's called teabagging. Speaking of teabagging, there's something I like to call the teabag wall of death. The low parry's activation window is 20 frames starting from frame 1, which means if you alternately press back and down forward in a 20 frame cycle, you will automatically low parry 95% of lows while still being able to block 90% of mids. 20 frames is 1/3 of a second. You do back, down forward, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, tack, 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 tack. The only frame you're vulnerable to lows is the moment you're pressing back, so 1 frame among 20 giving you a 90% low parry rate, and for mids you will be vulnerable to them during the 1 frame when you're pressing down forward and the next 1 frame recovering to neutral, which gives a 90% block rate on mids. This is pretty huge when you are facing a character you have no idea how to face, and yet nobody talks about this because pro players don't want to rely on randomness and casual players hate on teabagging. Are you really gonna get swayed by good player morals when you know that teabagging can literally win you the game against a difficult matchup?
Perfect.
Of course I was joking, sorry, but it doesn't work that way. This is just a troll thing to do while teabagging. Yeah, all jokes aside, yeah, good morals. All of that changes absolutely nothing about how the game is actually supposed to be played, but we still follow those moral trends because after all we wanna make friends while playing the game. This is completely fine, everyone plays the way they want, but let's be real, our brain is not performant enough to keep a friendly interaction with more than 150 people, and you're not intending to make a new friend out of every single dude you meet online. And when something is at stake, like tournament money or simply a rank, why not just going for the win? You can't say anything you won't make me believe your playstyle doesn't change in the least when there's a promotion or a demotion on the line. Sometimes it could even help you get better. In this game I really like King, but I'm not making use of his throw game as much as I should, because I have a terrible throw breaking rate, and to me spamming throws while not being able to break them consistently kinda sounds cowardly, like bringing a gun to a fight while fully knowing that you would shit yourself if you were in your opponent's shoes. But if I suddenly started to spam throws, my opponent would get pissed. He's gonna do throws as well, because yeah, we are not using throws really often. So sometimes we almost need someone to remind us that throws exist in the game. Yeah, he's gonna get pissed and do something like run up and 1+3 or whatever. It's hard to explain, but you can definitely feel the salt from these throws. And yeah, eventually I would get better at breaking throws. I hate to admit it, but for the sole purpose of following some kind of useless chivalry, I'm basically preventing myself from growing as a player. Spamming is, well, the word spamming is a pejorative branding for simply exploiting a flaw in your opponent's defense. Might be an asshole thing to do, but is it unfair? No. Everything is happening within the game that has been designed to work properly. There's always a proper response to find. Something unfair would be breaking those rules, like rage quitting or giving an elbow to your opponent during offline events. If something keeps working in game, why should you stop doing it? Are you supposed to win by doing stuff that won't work? The first layer of spamming is simply applying this idea, but yeah, you won't get really far playing like a green rank Brian, right? Now the second layer of spamming brings a psychological factor. By minimizing your offensive toolset to the bare necessary level, you are basically saying you don't need anything else. You are telling your opponent his defense and adaptability is garbage. Well, you won't be consciously sending that message, but that's most likely how he's gonna take it. I mean, isn't it a huge flex to beat your opponent with only 2 moves out of the 110 your character has? He will eventually get pissed and make mistakes he wasn't doing before. His playstyle becomes unusual as an attempt to respond to your unusual playstyle.
Fight.
To build a good spam, you will need to take account of two aspects. First, try to use a move in a seemingly dumb way to make your opponent realize he is not supposed to read that, because you won't look spammy if the move you use over and over is just a punish on his unsafe moves. You want your opponent to dumb down his playstyle. If for example your little lows catch both backdashes and sidesteps, he's gonna forget about movement. He will just duck or try to hop kick you. And secondly, deal the right amount of psychological damage to make your opponent want to fight back. If you got hit by a hammer multiple times, you'd be like shit. But if you were repeatedly flicked on the nose, you'd get pissed. Same principle, you want to spam something that is seen more as an annoyance, like little lows, hop kicks, little throws, than as a threat, like electrics, giant swings, and big counter hits. So if you are fishing for hop kicks, rather do little lows and little throws. Well, a giant swing will catch a hop kick airborne anyway, so he's not gonna try to hop kick you. And then you can go into a more advanced spammer mind game. You can alternate between instilling anger to make your opponent press more, and instilling fear to make him more defensive. Also try to apply a spam that matches your opponent's level for optimal effect, because spamming 28 frames sweeps and 25 frames orbitals on a higher level opponent won't make him mad at you. He will only get mad at himself. He might think a bit and try to adapt, and you don't want that. You want your opponent to forget about the obvious flaw of spamming.
Just make sure you practice your defense, punishes, possibly study a little frame data, and try to adapt, because I hear people say, how come I can keep up with good players, but how do I end up losing to these spammers? I mean, theoretically, if you know that your opponent is spamming, which means you know what they are about to do next, shouldn't you be the one to win?
To continue with asshole mind games, another interesting aspect is try to find your opponent's comfort zone and try to force him out of it. There are a few questions to ask yourself about your opponent. First one, how is his character supposed to be played, or how is it generally played? Once you figure out the way the character works, find a way to counter its general playstyle. Backdash away from characters that want to be in your face, like Steven Dragunov. Stay in the face of characters relying on movements like King and Armor King and Mishimas. Do quick pokes against sluggish characters like Bears, Marduk, Gigas. or turtle against characters relying on trying to counter hit you, like Asuka on Brian. Sometimes preventing your opponent from playing his game can be more efficient than just playing yours. Also, it's pretty efficient at getting him pissed. Second question, is it possible to match up cheese your opponent? Your opponent might not be familiar with all your moves. He might also not know how to fight your character. Generally, it's not a good idea to rely on gimmicks. You don't want 10 hits to become a legitimate part of your system, because since most of your cheese will work online, it might turn into a bad habit. But once you get the certainty that your opponent is unfamiliar with your matchup, then you can go for it. For example, is your opponent unaware of Brian's great counter hit tools?
Fight. Perfect.
And when your opponent knows what he's doing against your matchup, is there a way to reverse the cheese, doing exactly what you're not supposed to? Lai and Eddie are known to be mix-up heavy characters, but their offense crumbles as soon as someone knows the matchup. To me, their efficiency lies in a rather slow-paced defensive playstyle. Some not too crazy mix-ups to get the life lead into camping out your opponent with your great space control will force him to eventually run at your face and make the mistakes you were waiting for.
KO. Time up. KO.
Wall jump! Oh my goodness. I would do that. Yes!
To go deeper in that aspect, there are also some matchup perks that you can abuse no matter what your opponent does. This is what I like to call a matchup floodgate. How does your character do against your opponents? Are there some interactions worth noting? I just showed you an Eddie clip versus a Brian, and this is a really interesting case. If you are playing Eddie versus a Brian, you don't want to use your stances because you'll just get scooped by his down back 2, but you can launch punish his low soccer kick with while standing 1-3, and your back 1+2, the old back 2 with its built-in backdash plus sidestep right will evade most of his moves, since Brian lacks tracking to his left side, and even the forward 3 and the down forward 1 can whiff sometimes. You can basically backdash all day and back 1+2 the taunt when you're back to the wall, and even if you hit a forward 3 on counter hit, well, that's not a wall splat. All of that means if you can't rely on the usual negativa and handstand cheese, you can still get results by totaling the Brian. And also, if you are into frames, does your opponent's character have the tools to properly punish your bullshit? If not, you can unleash the Kraken on your controller. Third question, how does he behave at the wall? If he constantly tries to move away when back at the wall, chances are he doesn't like to be pressured at the wall and is not confident in his defense. If he tries to sidewalk to his left side, sidewalk to your right side to keep the wall at the right axis, he might also have some options like throws to switch positions with you, so you'll have to be prepared for them. On the contrary, does his character have good offensive options at the wall? I personally like facing Jin while being back to the wall, because nobody uses his back 4 and down 1. Mid, wall splat, high crush, only -7 on block, and even a wall bounce on the down 1, and all of the wall splat options are either dockable highs, unsafe, or super negative on block. And unless I have 40 HP left, I don't really care about eating Jin's Hell Sweep at a non-breakable wall or a non-breakable floor. Of course, a smart Jin player will not just abuse down forward 1-4 and forward 4-2, he will simply poke you to death. But how is that different from getting pressured out in the open, where you are not allowed to backdash Jin anyway because of his forward 4? The only thing that generally changes is the Jin will give up his turn more easily because usually he's just eager to land a wall splat move. Jin has a stupid amount of great tools, but in reality the players are only going for the fastest moves, which makes them predictable. Also, having such great wall splat tools will make the player forget about the hop kicks, which makes it easier to land a dig jab when you want to stop the bullshit. Yeah, if you think about it, you can just wait for the mistake most people will make when they are trying to get the wall splats. Breaking a turtle at the wall is not as easy as it sounds. Usually the reason they get their wall splat is they managed to make you panic. Being back to the wall is not that bad actually, and sometimes there are even characters that almost need to be back to the wall to build pressure. Fourth and last question I can think of, is it better to play on player 1 on player 2 side? Due to the crouching mechanic, sidestepping to the foreground is less reliable than sidestepping to the background, because you just can't sidestep to the foreground when you're crouching or waking up. When facing specific matchups, there are some situations when you absolutely, well, not absolutely, but you really want to be able to sidestep. Sidestepping from crouch, there is a good example. Kazuya's 1, 2, 4, 3. If you block the 4, you can interrupt the last hit with a 13 frames move, but you can also sidestep it to the left. Sidestep to the left from crouch is only possible on player 1 side. And yeah, this is something pretty valuable if you're playing a character that doesn't have a really good 13 frames while standing move. And also, sidestepping from an Oki situation. Yeah, you have seen that stupid laser mix-up. At first, when you're waking up, you will be pressing down, and when you see that actually it's a flying laser, there are a lot of moments you will just try to sidewalk to the foreground, but since you're already ducking, it will result in a misinput crouch.
Okay, one of those, huh? Oh my god! No! Oh god! Stupid jump! That's why you don't sidewalk! Why? I would've killed him! Ah, I lost any. Oh! Fucking walk!
Well, yeah, at this moment it does, being on player 1 on player 2 doesn't really matter, but it's simply here to say how valuable sidestepping to the background is compared to sidestep to the foreground. What else? Yeah, hell sweeps. Kazuya's hell sweeps, when he continuously does hell sweeps, you want to take roll to the left side, because if you take roll to the right side, it makes it easier to land another hell sweep. If the Kazuya does the same timing on a take roll to the left, the sweep will whiff. Well, that could be an interesting mix-up between a take roll right and take roll left. What happens after a take roll to the left side is the Kazuya will have to delay his sweep if he doesn't want the sweep to whiff, which means it gives you room to hop kick if you want to play YOLO, or sidewalk to your left side. And yeah, it's easier to do when you're playing on player 1 side. On the other hand, against Brian, like I said before, you want to sidestep to your right. Sometimes in Oki situations, the Brian can miss the timing for the quarter circle back 4, which will leave you room to sidestep to your right, which can't be done from player 1 side. So yeah, you want to be on player 2 side. And if the playing side doesn't really matter for you, then does it matter for your opponent? If it does, try to get him on his worst side. Unfortunately, since you can choose your preferred side, you can't reliably know on which side your opponent is playing, but there are a few clues you can find. Well, first, most people just pick player 1,
because you can direct the angle of the laser actually, if in case your opponent sidesteps it. Mix up. I can direct that laser, dude. I know you're stepping left.
And if his character is technical and execution heavy, you can try to switch sides, jump over him, slide under him, use a throw, etc. Just to see if his execution suddenly drops, because a lot of people, me included, tend to neglect practicing on their worst side.
Fight.
Now here are some general rules for ranked battle if you only care about getting the shiny rank. Play mostly in the afternoon when kids are back from school. There are more players during this time, so more potential praise. At 3 AM you can only find unemployed nerds. Until you reach the god ranks, try to find someone stuck in a rank with his best character with a lot of wins. The more wins he has, the more likely he is to be flowcharty and not really good at acting. Perfect prey for a deathmatch. While fishing for a deathmatch, don't triple perfect your opponent. The power crush is a really good tool for that, as you won't be left with a full health bar. Yes, I'm smart. Let him believe he has a chance, or try to piss him off to provoke him into a rematch. And as I said before, try to avoid finishing the game with a rage move. Only rematch lag your opponents if you can take advantage of the lag. Don't rematch people who easily destroyed you, of course. Rematch when you win by a margin, and stop if the opponent starts figuring out your playstyle. And if you are playing a rare character or a fresh DLC character, don't even take rematches. You don't want anyone to download the matchup, right? Leroy players can tell. Hey, these rules are about farming ranks. I never say they would be sportsmanlike. Now something a bit more legit. If your opponent is playing his highest ranked character, you can mostly rely on his ratings to have an idea of how to face him. Everything that is not in the top 3 ratings of your opponent is technically one of his weaknesses, and even the top ratings can sometimes shine a light on some flaws. Here are some examples. High rating in rage usage. Likes to do rage moves. Well, this one is probably the one you never wanna see in the top 3 ratings of your profile. This is basically asking to get baited for a panic rage eye. But this can also mean the guy likes to do rage drives, then you'll also have to be prepared for that. High ratings in combo damage and agility. Likes to whiff punish with lunges. So yeah, try not to get outspaced, use homings and long range moves. Yeah, I know this is easier said than done, but when you lose a game and go for the rematch, and you notice those stats, they will definitely give you a clue of what you were doing wrong during the previous game. High ratings in aggressivity, likes to mash, punish his unsafe stuff, or fish for counter hits.
Fight. KO. KO. KO.
High rating in defense ability, likes to defend. This stat is a bit misleading because it doesn't necessarily mean the guy has a good defense, it just means he likes to defend, which is why you won't see that stat along with other defensive ratings such as throw countering or punishment proficiency as often as you'd expect. High rating in throw countering, well, he breaks throws. This is a very rare stat to display as a top rating, but this kind of player is very interesting in a psychological point of view. You'll ask yourself, why does this guy have throw countering in his 3 most important stats? Like I said before, every stat that is not in the top 3 is technically a weakness, which means countless of other aspects such as agility, sidestepping, aggressivity, tenacity, combo damage, punishment have been overshadowed by just breaking throws. To have that stat, either he's had a super long deathmatch with a king or Maldog player, or he is the type of player who likes to defend until his opponent loses patience and starts using throws, which is why the throw countering stat is often coupled with the defense ability, and if he consistently breaks them, it means he doesn't randomly duck or hop kick the throws. There is a type of mix-up I like to call the Galaxy Brain Hwarang, which consists in doing highs, lows and throws. Highs usually have good frames on block, lows usually have good tracking, and throws are just here to let the guy take pride in his throw breaking ability, which means he will keep not ducking. Of course, doing only highs, lows and throws sounds utterly stupid, and you need to use that mix-up sparingly, but until your opponent figures out what you are doing, you don't need mids. High ratings in punishment proficiency and defense ability, likes to block and punish, so prone to get poked to death. This is my case when I'm playing seriously. Personally, I'm quite proud of my top ratings as a lab guy. But at the same time, these stats are pretty much screaming, please poke me to death with non-launch pushable stuff. Now it kinda sounds easy to beat me, right? This is another reason why I like to play other characters and going for stupid stuff, just to purposefully skew my data so that I won't have to meet a guy who can read my ratings and will just kill me with down forward ones, down forward and throws. So personal advice, if you're playing Kazuya like me or another rather defensive character that will force your stats to look oddly specific, if your ratings go too high, switch to something like Yoshi and do Yoshi stuff to reset the data.
Not cool. Not cool. Give me strength.
Great.
Oh my goodness.
Or just generally play a lot of different characters in different ways so that your opponent cannot use reliable data to counter your playstyle. And of course it will also help you varying your playstyles, because only playing one specific way easily becomes detrimental for your growth. You will create a lot of automatisms that might turn into bad habits depending on the matchup. By the way, since I'm a rather defensive player, I tend to promote defensive playstyles to the point it might sound slightly biased, so when I'm talking about matchups, please take whatever I'm saying with a pinch of salt. So that was it for the brainy talk. This video was about how a good thinking can pretty much negate a lot of theoretical stuff, because mind games are, we could say, the opposite of on-paper knowledge, and when applied correctly, you can make any stupid shit work. A lot of people like to say, I'm pretty good against good players, but sometimes I struggle against noobs because I don't understand what they are doing. Well, of course, anyone can lose some games to completely chaotic bullshit.
Oh! Ass blasted. Oh, okay. What the fuck is this?
But what if it was possible to replicate that effect while fully knowing what you're doing?
That was weird. Oh, the rain. Okay. I'm done.
KO. Fight.
Oh god. It's so strong. Oh, just down by 2 for God's sake. Oh no. Why you gotta give it to him like he... The most obscure moves imaginable, he's doing them.
The good players are most likely always going to do the thing that is logical and safe, but that kinda makes them predictable. The greater players are able to play around this and make sometimes some unorthodox decisions that will somehow work. This is the difference between creative and scrubby. I shouldn't even need to mention that, but even the Koreans, who are known for their super clean and safe playstyle, actually have mind games. Sometimes they will also press at -8. The obvious example is not finishing a string to press something else while the opponent lost his theoretical frame advantage waiting for the last hit. the martial law strat for those of you who watched my psychology video for Tech 2. When I'm cheesing people with setups, the people I can usually cheese are those with a logical mind, which allows me to apply mind games. The greater players, whose patterns are harder to read, and noobs who don't have patterns are actually harder to trap with setups. Well, it is possible to cheese noobs, but it's simply by applying the first layer of spamming, simply doing the stuff that works, with no mind game behind it. Thanks a lot for watching, that was a really interesting video to make, and if you guys have ideas for other subjects to discuss, feel free to tell me. Cheers!